Hi there, I'm Chip Davis of Mannheim Steamroller.
This is Darlene Love.
Season's greetings from all of us here at Saturday Night Live.
This is Faith Hill.
This is Gretchen Peters. You're listening to The Sounds of Christmas
podcast.
Welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. I'm Ken Kessler. If you're new to this podcast, I want to start by saying thanks for joining us. If you're not new, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to start off by saying there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October, when we play the best variety of Halloween music. I'd like to be among the first to wish a happy 40th anniversary to Mannheim Steamroller. It's not quite their anniversary yet, but it was 40 years ago this fall that the very first Mannheim Steamroller Christmas album was released. Anniversary or not, I thought it was high time that I talked about them on this podcast and their rich history of Christmas music. Mannheim Steamroller was instrumental in helping me get the Sounds of Christmas station off the ground. They were major sponsors for the first 3 years, promoting new Christmas albums each year. I'll go into all of that in more detail in just a bit. First, about the band. Mannheim Steamroller began as an alias for record producer and composer Chip Davis. The name Mannheim Steamroller comes from an 18th century German musical technique. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on this, as this is a podcast devoted to Christmas music. But for those who don't know, Mannheim Steamroller had been recording and releasing music 10 years before that first Christmas album came out, so this year is also their 50th anniversary as a band. Their first 4 albums each represented a season, with the 4th one being dedicated to winter. While there weren't really any Christmas songs on that album, there was a song called Red Wine, which was a rearranged version of Greensleeves. That album was called Fresh Air 4. I think there have been 8 albums in the Fresh Air series, not including the second Christmas album, which I'll get to in just a bit. Fresh Air 4 was released in 1981. 3 years later, Mannheim Steamroller released Christmas, their first Christmas album. Even though 2024 marks that album's 40th anniversary, I can still vividly remember when I heard it for the first time almost 40 years ago in December of 1984. I was in the record bar at North Hills in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was frequently in record stores in December looking for Christmas music, new and old and in between. And while I was thumbing through some of the new releases, probably looking for that elusive 12-inch single of Band-Aid's Do They Know It's Christmas, an employee of Record Bar put on the new Mannheim Steamroller record. Side 1, track 1, Deck the Halls. It stopped me in my tracks. It was so familiar and yet somehow at the same time unlike anything I'd ever heard. Whatever else I was supposed to do that day got canceled. I bought that album, went home, and listened to it over and over. There were 11 songs, each based on carols that were over 100 years old, yet they all sounded brand new. Hearing it that first time was an amazing experience. I wanted to share it with everyone I'd ever met, and I also wanted to greedily keep that Christmas music magic all to myself. There are 2 versions of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen on that first album, a Renaissance version and a rock version. Years later, when I got to see them in concert, they played these 2 songs back to back, something they also did for their first live album. I don't know that is always the case when they're in concert, but it certainly was a treat to catch them doing those 2 songs back to back live. In the liner notes to the album Christmas Extraordinaire, which I'll get to shortly, Chip Davis wrote, quote, "Christmas has always been a special time of year for me, largely due to the music of the season. It's a time for being with family and friends, socializing in general, and, of course, enjoying great food. I decided to do the first Christmas album as a way to take some Christmas carols back to the sound of their origins in the Renaissance. If I was going to do that, then I thought I should do some in a modern way, a Mannheim Steamroller way. People in the music business said, 'Chip, you're doing the wrong thing. Artists only do a Christmas album when they're out of ideas or have a contract to fulfill.' I said, 'You know that Fresh Air 5 album you've been wanting to sell? Well, you have to take this Christmas album or you can't have it.' I think we're all glad that they took it." End quote. The success of that first Christmas album got the attention of the entire record industry. And it wasn't long before many artists and labels began to increase their Christmas music output. For example, in 1984, the year this came out, there were only 7 Christmas albums released. Compare that to this past season in 2023, where I had almost 500 Christmas releases sent to me. And that may not all be due to Mannheim Steamroller, but they certainly had an important part in making it happen. In 1988, Mannheim Steamroller released their second Christmas album, A Fresh Air Christmas. I was surprised to learn that this album was and is their best-selling Christmas album. Surprised only because of my love for that first one. For this one, Chip Davis actually asked Mannheim Steamroller fans to submit their suggestions for songs, and he added up the results and actually sent the fans whose choices made the album a thank you note and a copy of the album. A Fresh Air Christmas is the 6th best-selling Christmas album in the U.S., and their first Christmas album is number 7. The second Christmas album featured 2 tracks written by Chip Davis, Hark the Herald Trumpets Sing and Traditions of Christmas. The first album ended with an amazing version of Silent Night, and the second ends with an equally amazing version of Oh Holy Night. The next Christmas album came out in 1995, and Chip Davis only contributed 1 new song to that one. The album was called Christmas in the Air, and the song was Christmas Lullaby, a song Mannheim Steamroller would re-record in 2007 with Olivia Newton-John. It's a bit misleading to say that Chip only contributed 1 new song to this album, as he arranged all of the tracks on it, just as he did with the first 2 Christmas albums, and as he's done with every Christmas album since. This one included a couple songs more associated with pop than classical music, as the lineups of the previous albums had been done. Christmas in the Air featured versions of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Jingle Bells, in addition to songs more readily associated with the kinds of Christmas music Mannheim Steamroller was known for, like Joy to the World and Angels We Have Heard on High. Yet all of these songs fit together. None seem out of place. I think of this as part of the magic of Christmas music. You can mix and match genres, and somehow it almost always works. Christmas in the Air would go on to become Mannheim Steamroller's 3rd best-selling Christmas album. 2 years later, Mannheim Steamroller released their first live Christmas album, appropriately titled Christmas Live. All of the songs in this album were live versions of songs found on the first 3 Mannheim Steamroller Christmas albums, except for the last track, Going to Another Place, which was actually on Fresh Air 2, originally released in 1977. 1997 also saw the limited release of My Little Christmas Tree and Other Christmas Bedtime Stories, a book which included a music CD, and that CD included a few songs that were previously unreleased by Mannheim Steamroller: Traditions of Christmas Music Box, My Little Christmas Tree, and Above the Northern Lights. This album was finally released digitally in 2012. In 1998, Mannheim Steamroller released The Christmas Angel, A Family Story. This was written by Chip Davis. The soundtrack, accompanied by the narration of Chip Davis and Olivia Newton-John, tells the story of a decorative angel that is stolen from the top of a Christmas tree. Some of the songs on this album hadn't been on previous Christmas albums, but they all had narration over them by either Chip Davis or Olivia Newton-John. Most notably, it included the song Messengers of Christmas, which would show up on the album Christmasville in 2008. The story was later turned into a figure skating production titled The Christmas Angel, A Story on Ice, starring Dorothy Hamill. In 2001, Mannheim Steamroller released their next Christmas album, Christmas Extraordinaire. Like Christmas in the Air, Christmas Extraordinaire included a couple pop songs like White Christmas and Winter Wonderland, alongside more classical numbers like Away in a Manger and Handel's Hallelujah. It also featured a version of O Tannenbaum with vocals by Johnny Mathis, along with the University of Michigan Men's Glee Club. That same year, Mannheim Steamroller released the Christmas Collection, which included 4 of their Christmas CDs: Christmas, A Fresh Air Christmas, Christmas in the Air, and the new release, Christmas Extraordinaire. For collectors, the bonus with this set was the inclusion of a Mannheim Steamroller Christmas ornament. 3 years later, they released Christmas Celebration. This was kind of a greatest hits collection with 1 new song, the first track, Celebration. The rest of the songs were culled from previous Mannheim Steamroller Christmas albums. Target stores had a special version with 2 bonus tracks, The Holly and the Ivy from the first Mannheim Steamroller Christmas album, and Messengers of Christmas, a song that had appeared on the Christmas Angel album with narration over it. But this version was just the music and hadn't previously been released in this form. In 2006, Mannheim Steamroller released the compilation Winter Wonderland. Of it, Chip Davis said, quote, "This season, above all, seems to evoke more memories than most. Remembering the magic at my grandparents' house on Christmas morning when it's still dark out and the Christmas lights are the only source of light in the small town farmhouse, the candlelight service at the church on Christmas Eve, the wonderful smells of Christmas dinner cooking all day long. Each one of these songs has a special place in my heart and makes it possible for me to travel back to those simpler and wonderful times." End quote. While the track list appears to contain songs that had all previously appeared on other Mannheim Steamroller albums, it's actually credited to Mannheim Steamroller and Renaissance La Doo-Dah Band, making it unclear if these tracks had been re-recorded. And now we're up to 2007. This was a very big year for the Sounds of Christmas. The online station debuted in the fall, thanks in no small part to Mannheim Steamroller. They sponsored us, being instrumental in getting the Sounds of Christmas on the air. They sent me their commercial to promote the brand new album, Christmas Song, and they also sent me stuff to give away, including CDs, hot chocolate, and their limited edition book, My Little Christmas Tree and Other Christmas Bedtime Stories. Mannheim Steamroller continued to sponsor the Sounds of Christmas in 2008 and 2009, each year with a new release that we were able to help promote. And I have no doubt that our early successes are due to their support. I will always be grateful for their assistance, and while I want to go on, this episode is about Mannheim Steamroller and not me or the Sounds of Christmas station. So, in 2007, Mannheim Steamroller released the album Christmas Song. This one featured more pop-type songs than any of the previous releases, including Let It Snow, Santa Claus Was Coming to Town, and Frosty the Snowman. It also featured 3 vocalists. Gene Neary sang on Above the Christmas Lights, Johnny Mathis on The Christmas Song, and Olivia Newton-John sang Christmas Lullaby. Christmas Song also included Chip Davis's original song, Catching Snowflakes on Your Tongue. There were a couple other releases that same year that collectors might be interested in. The first was an album called The Making of Christmas Song, and it featured Chip Davis talking about each of the songs on that album. There was no music on this one, and it was distributed as a promotional item to radio stations. The other was a compilation sold exclusively at Lowe's home improvement stores. It was called Trimming the Tree and contained all previously released material. It was packaged as part of a 2-CD set with the Mannheim Steamroller album Christmas Extraordinaire. In 2008, Mannheim Steamroller released the album Christmasville. Of this, Chip Davis said, quote, "I got a phone call from the mythical land at Universal Orlando Theme Park. They had a show called Grinchmas that was in need of a slight rearranging of its various audio pieces so that they would sound like they were from the same century. Earlier centuries don't exist on tape or any other format that we know of, so you can see how important this undertaking was." End quote. Chip was hesitant to release this as an album as it was so different from the music Mannheim Steamroller was known for, and the entire album was only about 30 minutes. He had planned to just leave it as something for Universal, but then decided fans of Mannheim Steamroller would probably want to hear it. The album contained Mannheim Steamroller versions of songs from the original animated TV special of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, as well as a version of Where Are You Christmas from the Jim Carrey movie. It also included a version of Everybody's Waiting for the Man with the Bag, which isn't in any Grinch production as far as I know of, but it's a pretty good version of a really good Christmas song. There were also 2 compilations released in 2008. Sweet Memories included 12 previously released tracks, of which Chip Davis said that each held a special place in his heart. For collectors, this album was significant because it included the song My Little Christmas Tree, which had been a part of the limited edition book My Little Christmas Tree and Other Christmas Bedtime Stories, and at that point wasn't nationally released. The other compilation was A Candlelight Christmas, which had 10 previously released songs, and of this one, Chip Davis said, quote, "Candlelight makes everything magical. I don't know what it is about it, but it brings a certain amount of ceremony with it. I have an indelible memory of one very special Christmas Eve in my little Ohio village of Hamler, where I grew up in my grade school years. I think I was about 6 years old, and I was allowed to sing in the choir. My dad was the choir director, and my grandmother played the church organ. This must have been the first processional I was involved in. We all lined up in front of the church and could smell the fresh pine we draped around the railings. The air was crisp, and those thin choir robes weren't helping much to keep out the cold. Then they started to ring the church bell, and up the stairs we went towards the sanctuary, singing the hymn with commitment. Then we went through the double doors. Wow, it looked like there were 1,000 candles burning. The mystery and ceremony was overwhelming. The choir never sounded better. I'll never forget that Christmas Eve. End quote. In 2009, Mannheim Steamroller released a double CD compilation, Mannheim Steamroller Christmas 25th Anniversary Celebration. It featured 25 songs marking the 25th anniversary of that first Christmas album. The songs come from 8 previous Mannheim Steamroller studio Christmas albums. The following year, collectors could find a new collection called Heading Home, sold exclusively at Lowe's. It contained 14 previously released songs. In 2011, Chip Davis took Mannheim Steamroller to Prague to record with the Czech Philharmonic. The result was the album Christmas Symphony, which was made up of new recordings and new arrangements of previously released songs. 2011 also saw the release of Hometown, a new Christmas music compilation sold exclusively at Lowe's. That same year, there was also the release of an 8-CD box called the Ultimate Christmas Collection. This was a limited edition set, individually numbered and sold exclusively through Amazon. It contained the CDs Christmas, A Fresh Air Christmas, Christmas in the Air, Christmas Live, Christmas Extraordinaire, Christmas Song, Christmasville, and Christmas Symphony, all housed in a beautiful wooden box, a truly amazing gift for fans. In 2012, Lowe's had a new exclusive compilation called 'Tis the Season with 14 more previously released songs. The next year, Mannheim Steamroller released a second album featuring the Czech Philharmonic, appropriately called Christmas Symphony 2. This time around, the CD was only available at Target stores. The first song on this album is a new version of Carol of the Bells, and I have to tell you that this particular track has that rare magic to still give me that Christmassy feeling. As you can imagine, I hear lots of Christmas songs, including hundreds of new ones every year. But this version of Carol of the Bells is one of the few that still gives me that magic Christmas feeling. I don't know if it'll have the same effect on you, but it's definitely worth a shot. And like most of Mannheim Steamroller's music, you can find it everywhere that you can stream and download music. A different kind of compilation came out in 2014. It was called 3040, and it marked 30 years since the first Mannheim Steamroller Christmas album and 40 years since Mannheim Steamroller debuted with the first Fresh Air album. 3040 had 16 tracks, half of which were Christmas songs, and almost all of those were from previous Christmas albums, but there was one that was actually a new version of Greensleeves with vocals by Chip Davis's daughter, Elise. There was also a special 3-CD version of 3040 in which the first CD was all Christmas music, 19 songs, and the other 2 CDs were all culled from the Fresh Air series, 31 songs over the 2 CDs. In 2015, Mannheim Steamroller released a new live album simply called Mannheim Steamroller Live. While not solely a Christmas album, 13 of the 18 songs on it were live versions of songs from previous Mannheim Steamroller Christmas albums. And once again, Target stores had an exclusive version with extra songs, including a live version of Good King Wenceslas. And in 2019, Mannheim Steamroller celebrated the 35th anniversary of their first Christmas album with a special green vinyl version. This was a limited edition version, and some sellers are charging well over $100 for it today. However, it looks like you may still be able to get a copy directly from Mannheim Steamroller, and I will add a link directly to that in the Mannheim Steamroller store down in the show notes. And that is just about it, I think. Now, Chip Davis did release 3 CDs in the 90s under his own name. The first 2 were called Holiday Music and Holiday Music 2, and music is spelled M-U-S-I-K. These do include some familiar names from Mannheim Steamroller, but both albums are attributed to Chip Davis. Of the holiday music albums, Chip Davis says, quote, "I wanted to have an album that could be played at other holidays, dinners, or even Christmas. Try sequencing it between Mannheim Steamroller Christmas albums, and it very likely could be the perfect companion to Christmas. I hope you'll enjoy this hand-picked selection of various pieces and movements recorded by my friends that play on all my records." End quote. The third Chip Davis CD from the 90s is called Chip Davis presents Renaissance Holiday, which includes the London Symphony Orchestra and the Pittsburgh Symphony Brass. Of this one, Chip Davis said, quote, Renaissance Holiday brings together a festive mix of music from the Renaissance that evokes in sound the joys of the season, including Christmas carols that have their roots in the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, end quote. And I think that really is it. It's possible that I missed a compilation here or there, or possibly a special digital release. And Mannheim Steamroller did release many exclusive albums only available at certain retailers, so it is possible I missed some of those too. By the way, in the latest list of the best-selling Christmas albums in the U.S., according to RIAA certification, that's the Record Industry Association of America, award certification is based on the number of albums and singles sold through retail and other ancillary markets. Mannheim Steamroller's first two Christmas albums are still in the top 10. Their third Christmas album, Christmas in the Air, is number 15, and Christmas Extraordinaire is number 20. And while that first Christmas album wasn't the best-selling Christmas album of 1984, that honor went to Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton for Once Upon a Christmas. Mannheim Steamroller did have the best-selling Christmas album in other years. A Fresh Air Christmas was the best-selling Christmas album in 1988 and 1991, and Christmas in the Air was the best-selling Christmas album in 1995. So happy anniversary to Mannheim Steamroller. It has been a pleasure playing your Christmas music for all these years on the Sounds of Christmas station and before that on other radio stations where I worked, and of course, my own home sound system. Thank you, Mannheim Steamroller, for the music and for helping to make the Sounds of Christmas happen. And thank you so much for listening and for helping me share some Christmas spirit and for continuing to support the Sounds of Christmas station and podcast. I told you how to listen to the station, and you're already listening to the podcast, so my work here is just about done. All of our episodes are available on the Sounds of Christmas website. Just click the podcast tab. And we also have a Linktree page which lists most, if not all, of the sites that carry the Sounds of Christmas podcast. So you can find your favorite, click on over, subscribe, and you'll never miss another episode. If you have comments or suggestions on this episode, previous episodes, or the Sounds of Christmas station, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through the website. Thanks again. And may you always believe in Santa Claus.